The smell of seared wagyu and expensive perfume curdled in the air, soured by the gunpowder tang of fear. Kaido Ishikawa held his chopstick steady, a sliver of pink tuna halfway to his lips. He did not look at the four men in ill-fitting black suits who had stormed the main dining room of Kiku. He didn't need to. He had assessed them the moment the heavy oak doors splintered inward. Cheap wool, scuffed shoes, rented muscle. Italians, judging by the guttural cadence of their shouts. Amateurs playing at professionals. His own men, Ryota and Kenji, sat motionless at his table, their hands below the white linen, their loyalty as solid and silent as the granite countertop of the sushi bar. The other patrons, bankers and their mistresses, tech barons celebrating hollow victories, were a symphony of panic. A dropped wine glass shattered. A woman sobbed into a napkin. But Kaido's attention was not on the chaos. It was on the stillness. Her name was Lena. She had been their server tonight. An American woman, statuesque and serene, her dark skin a stark, beautiful contrast to the minimalist cream and bamboo decor. She moved through the chaos of dinner rush like water flowing around stones, a study in effortless grace. Now, she was frozen, a silver tray of clear dessert plates held in one hand. One of the intruders, the one with a pockmarked face and nervous, darting eyes, had his pistol leveled directly at her temple. His hand trembled. Hers did not. Kaido watched her reflection in the polished black window opposite his booth. He saw her eyes. They were not wide with terror. They were narrowed, analytical. Her gaze wasn't on the gun barrel inches from her skin, but on the man holding it. She was observing his stance, the tension in his shoulders, the sweat beading on his upper lip.
She was calculating.
A predator does not fear a panicked animal. It assesses it. And in that moment, Kaido, a man who had built an empire on his ability to read the souls of men, recognized the profound, terrifying calm of a fellow apex predator. The man barked a command in broken Japanese, gesturing with the gun.
Bait.
Money.
Now.
She didn't move. Her breathing didn't even hitch. It was an impossible composure that silenced the room more effectively than any gunshot could have. It was a defiance so absolute it felt like a physical force. Everyone stared, shocked not by the violence of the robbers, but by the unnerving tranquility of the waitress. The robbers were gone as quickly as they had appeared, their canvas bags filled with wallets, watches, and the superficial emblems of wealth they had mistaken for power. They had taken nothing of value from Kaido. The sirens wailed in the distance, a familiar and irrelevant sound. The restaurant staff rushed to comfort the hysterical patrons, but Kaido's gaze remained fixed on Lena. She had placed the silver tray on a nearby table with a soft, deliberate click. No tremor, no sign of adrenaline's aftermath. She moved to a weeping woman in a silk dress, her voice low and steady, a calming balm in the raw, frayed atmosphere. She was not consoling. She was managing. She handled the arrival of the first police officers with the same dispassionate efficiency, answering their initial frantic questions with brief, precise sentences. She gave them nothing but the facts, her face an unreadable mask of professional concern. She was a ghost, leaving no emotional trace on the scene of the crime. Ryota leaned forward, his voice a low rumble meant only for Kaido. "Sensei? Your instructions?" Kaido took a slow sip of his chilled sake, the delicate porcelain cup cool against his fingers. He watched Lena point out the exit the robbers had used, her posture perfect, her gestures economical. She was a study in contained energy. "Find out who she is," Kaido said, his voice quiet but absolute. "Not the name on her employment records. I want to know who she is." He had seen men face death. He had seen soldiers, hardened killers, and desperate fools stare down the barrel of a gun. They always showed something. A flicker of fear, a surge of anger, a grim resignation. They showed that they were alive, and that they were afraid of no longer being so. Lena had shown nothing. It was not bravery. Bravery was the conquest of fear. This was the absence of it. It was the calm of a person for whom a gun to the head was not a novel experience.
It was a Tuesday.
That kind of stillness wasn't learned waiting tables. It was forged in fire and blood, in a life where violence was a language, not an interruption. He set his cup down. The mystery of her was more compelling than any business deal, more intriguing than any rival's threat. He needed to understand the source of that impossible calm. He always did. That's how you survive. Ryota returned 2 days later, placing a thin manila folder on the polished mahogany of Kaido's desk. The office, on the top floor of a skyscraper that pierced the Tokyo sky, was silent save for the hum of the city far below. Her name is Lena Washington. Ryota began, his tone formal. American citizen. She has been in Japan for 2 years, on a work visa sponsored by the restaurant group. Before that, she was in Kyoto for 3 years, working at a similar establishment. Her file is clean. Kaido opened the folder. It contained a single sheet of paper with a low-resolution photograph stapled to the corner. The woman in the picture was Lena, but it was a flat, lifeless version of her. A bureaucratic shell. Social security number issued 5 years ago, Ryota continued, anticipating his master's thoughts. No credit history before that date. No records of education. No family listed. No previous addresses in the United States. According to the official record, Lena Washington simply came into existence 5 years ago. Fully formed, Kaido traced the edge of the photograph with his thumb. A ghost. A meticulously constructed identity designed to withstand casual scrutiny, but fall apart under any real pressure. Someone had built this life for her, or she had built it for herself. Either possibility was equally fascinating. The robbers? Kaido asked, closing the folder. Italian nationals. Low-level muscle for the Vespri family, out of Naples. We found one of them, the loud one with the scarred face.
He was
forthcoming. It was not a simple robbery. Ryota paused, choosing his words carefully. They were not looking for money. They were looking for a person. An African-American woman, tall, working in a high-end establishment. The robbery was a cover, a way to scout the location and confirm the target without drawing specific attention. Kaido's mind connected the dots. The Italians, the professional nature hidden beneath a veneer of amateurism, the search for a specific woman. And Lena's impossible calm. It wasn't just that she was a survivor. She was the one being hunted. He stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the endless river of lights. She was hiding in plain sight, a wolf disguised in a servant's uniform. Leave her, Kaido said. Do not have her followed. Do not investigate further. Ryota bowed, confused but obedient. Hi, sensei. Kaido continued to stare at the city. He would not use his organization to uncover her secrets. A tool as blunt as the Yakuza would only frighten her away or force her hand. This required a different approach. Finesse. Patience. He would go back to the restaurant. He would sit at her table. He would watch, and he would wait for the ghost to reveal herself. He became a fixture at Kiku, always requesting the same booth in the quietest corner of the restaurant, a table that fell within her designated section. For 3 weeks, he came alone, dining in contemplative silence. He ordered sparingly, ate slowly, and watched. He watched the way she moved, a fluid economy of motion that wasted no energy. He noticed how she was never truly surprised by a guest's request or a colleague's approach. Her peripheral awareness was absolute. Her back was never to the main entrance for more than a few seconds. She would pivot, adjust a place setting, or retrieve a bottle of water, always creating a reason to keep the room in her field of vision. She knew he was watching her. He saw it in the subtle tension that entered her shoulders when he arrived, a tightening so faint anyone else would have missed it. She never acknowledged his scrutiny directly, her professionalism a flawless shield. Her service was impeccable, her smile polite but distant, her eyes revealing nothing. She was a fortress. The other staff treated him with a mixture of fear and reverence, recognizing him as Oyabun of the Ishikawa Gumi. They scurried to meet his needs, their bows deep, their hands trembling. Lena treated him like any other customer. She was compliant, the way a coiled spring was still. On the first night of the 4th week, as she poured his water, her hand steady as a surgeon's, he finally broke the silence. He didn't look at her, instead focusing on the condensation trailing down his glass. "You were not afraid," he said. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact, an accusation, and an invitation all at once. She finished pouring, placing the heavy glass bottle back on the table with a soft, definitive sound. Her movements remained unhurried. For a long moment, she said nothing, the ambient noise of the restaurant filling the space between them. He could feel her gaze on him, cool and appraising. She was deciding what kind of threat he was. When she finally spoke, her voice was as smooth and controlled as the rest of her. "Fear is a luxury, sir. Some of us can't afford it." She met his eyes then, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of something beyond the placid facade. It wasn't warmth, and it wasn't fear. It was a glint of hardened steel. "Will there be anything else?" she asked, the professional mask sliding perfectly back into place. He simply shook his head, and she turned and walked away, her back straight, leaving him alone with her words hanging in the air like smoke. She found him after her shift. He was waiting in his car, a black, unassuming sedan parked in the shadows of the alley behind the restaurant. The engine was off. He had known she would come. Her approach was silent. He only knew she was there when her silhouette blocked the faint glow of a distant street lamp. She didn't tap on the window. She just stood there, waiting. He unlocked the passenger door. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before getting in, closing the door with a quiet click that seemed to seal them in a bubble of shared tension. She smelled faintly of lemons and clean linen, a scent that seemed at odds with the danger that clung to her like a shroud. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice devoid of pleasantries. She stared straight ahead, through the windshield at the grimy brick wall opposite them. "I want to understand," Kaito said simply. "The men who came to the restaurant, they were not common thieves. They were sent by someone to find you. The robbery was a test. A way to see if you were the one they were looking for." He saw her hands, resting in her lap, clench into tight fists. A small, almost imperceptible betrayal of her inner state. "That has nothing to do with you," she said, her voice tight. "When men like that operate in my city, it has everything to do with me," he countered, his tone even. "They were sloppy, but their masters are not. Whoever is hunting you will not stop. They will send others. Better ones." He let the silence stretch, allowing the weight of his words to settle. He was offering a lifeline, but it was one that came with its own set of chains. "I can offer you protection. A place where they cannot reach you." She finally turned to look at him, her dark eyes searching his face in the dim light. "Why?" she asked, the single word sharp with suspicion. "No one does anything for free. Let's call it a professional courtesy," Kaito replied. "I am a collector of rare things. And you, Ms. Washington, are exceedingly rare. Besides, I do not appreciate it when another organization makes a mess in my territory without my permission." He saw the conflict in her eyes. The instinct to run, to disappear again, warring with the cold realization that her old methods were no longer working. They had found her. She shook her head. "I don't need your protection." "Perhaps not," Kaito conceded. "But you might need my resources. They will not come at you from the front next time." He started the car, the engine a low purr. He didn't press her further. The seed was planted in fertile ground. He had shown her that he saw her, not as a waitress, but as what she truly was. Now he would wait for the hunters to force her hand. The man Ryota had found did not live long, but his final words were valuable. He had spoken of a name, whispered in fear and reverence: Marco Vespri. The name was not unknown to Kaito. Vespri was not a traditional mafioso. He operated in the gray world of private intelligence, corporate espionage, and political wetwork, a ghost in the machine of European power. He was a spider at the center of a vast, invisible web, a man who dealt in secrets and death with equal proficiency. He was known for his obsessions, for his refusal to ever let go of an asset he considered his. The report from Kaito's contacts in Rome confirmed it. Vespri had lost his most prized operative nearly 6 years ago. An assassin known only as the Ghost, a woman who had vanished without a trace after a high-profile assignment in Vienna. The description was vague but damning. Tall, athletic, and lethally efficient. The pieces clicked into place, forming a picture that was both terrifying and magnificent. Lena wasn't just a survivor. She was a weapon that had escaped its master. Vespri wasn't just hunting her. He was trying to reclaim his property. Kaido sat in his office, the city lights a glittering tapestry below, and considered the scale of the game he had just entered. This was not a turf war with a rival Yakuza clan. This was a conflict with a global player who operated by no rules but his own. Vespri's encroachment was a profound insult, a challenge to his sovereignty. He could have Lena eliminated, severing the connection and ending the problem.
But the thought was dissatisfying.
To destroy something so unique, so perfectly forged, felt like a waste. More than that, his curiosity had hardened into a kind of intellectual respect. He wanted to see how she would play her hand. "Watch her apartment," he commanded Ryota. "From a distance. Use the building across the street. I want to know everything. Who comes, who goes, who watches. I want to see the next move before Vespri makes it." Ryota bowed. "And if his men try to take her?" Kaido considered this, looking at the thin folder on his desk, the ghost's file. "For now," he said slowly, "we only observe. Let us see what the rabbit does when the wolves begin to circle the burrow." He knew it was a risk. Vespri's men would be professionals. But he needed to know Lena's limits, her capabilities. He needed to see the weapon unsheathed before he decided how to wield it. The call came from Ryota 3 nights later. His voice was calm, but threaded with an undercurrent of urgency. "Sensei." A black sedan.
2 men.
They have been parked down the street from her building for 4 hours. They haven't moved. They are watching. Kaido stood from his desk. The waiting was over. Vespri's hunters were in place, patient and disciplined. They wouldn't storm her apartment. Their method would be more subtle. They would wait for her to emerge, follow her, learn her routine, and then isolate her when she was most vulnerable. It was a professional play, but it was also predictable. "Are they our only audience?"
Kaido asked.
"Negative," Ryota confirmed. "There is another vehicle, a gray van at the other end of the block. Different team. Vespri is thorough. He has a primary and a support unit." This changed the calculation. It was a classic snatch-and-grab setup. The sedan would make the move, and the van would provide interference or a secondary extraction point. Lena, walking home from a late shift, would be caught between them. She would have nowhere to run. Kaido made his decision. He would not allow Vespri to reclaim his asset on Kaido's soil. But he would not simply intervene and save her either. That would make her indebted, a subject. He wanted an ally, a partner. To get that, he had to give her the opportunity to save herself, to demonstrate her value beyond any doubt. He had to force her hand, not just for his own understanding, but for her own survival. She needed to be reminded of what she was. "Ryota, pull your men back 2 blocks. Maintain visual but do not engage," Kaido instructed, his mind racing. "I am on my way. I have a different plan." He would not be her savior. He would be the catalyst. He called 2 of his own men, enforcers who were big, brutish, and utterly loyal. He gave them simple instructions. They were to find her on her route home, in a secluded part of the street away from Vespri's direct line of sight. They were to corner her. They were to play the part of common street thugs, to threaten her, to create a moment of intense, direct pressure. "Do not underestimate her," Kaido warned them over the phone. "Do not truly harm her. Your job is to create a problem she must solve." Immediately, he would be there, watching from the shadows. He needed to see it for himself. He needed to see the ghost emerge from its shell. The street was poorly lit, lined with sleeping warehouses and the skeletons of old factories. A cold mist drifted in from the bay, muffling sound and turning the sparse streetlights into hazy orbs. Kaido sat in the driver's seat of his car, parked in the mouth of a dark alley, the engine silent. He had a clear view of the narrow sidewalk 50 yards away. He saw Lena walking, her pace steady, a grocery bag in one hand. She looked like any other woman heading home after a long day. But he saw the subtle, constant scans of her head, the way she stayed away from the deep shadows of doorways. She knew she was in danger. She could feel the eyes on her. Then, as planned, his 2 men stepped out from behind a dumpster, blocking her path. They were large men, dressed in hoodies and jeans, their posture aggressive. From this distance, they were utterly convincing as street predators. "Nice evening," one of them growled, his voice carrying on the damp air. A little late for a woman to be walking alone, Lena stopped. Her body went perfectly still. Kaido leaned forward, his eyes narrowed, watching her every micro-expression in the dim light. This was the moment. He saw her assess them. Two hostiles, blocking her path, no immediate escape route. For a heartbeat, she looked like a victim. Her shoulders slumped slightly, her head dipped. It was a perfect piece of misdirection, an invitation for them to drop their guard. They took a step closer, confident. And then she moved. It wasn't a fight. It was a process of dismantling. The first man reached for her arm. She flowed under his grasp, her free hand striking his throat in a short, sharp jab. As he gagged, she pivoted, using her body's momentum to spin inside his reach. Her elbow connected with his jaw with a sickening crack. He crumpled without a sound. The second man, stunned by the speed of it, fumbled to react. He was too slow. Lena moved toward him, not away. She kicked his knee from the side, a brutal, precise strike that hyperextended the joint. As he screamed and buckled, she drove the heel of her palm up under his nose. He dropped like a stone, unconscious before he hit the pavement. The entire engagement lasted less than 5 seconds. She stood over them for a moment, her breathing even, her stance balanced. Then, without a second glance at the two broken men on the ground, she turned her head and looked directly at the alley where Kaido's car was hidden. She couldn't see him, but she knew. She knew this was a test. She knew he was there. After a long, silent moment, she turned and continued walking home, leaving the wreckage of his plan behind her. She came to him at dawn. Not at his office or any of his known properties, but at a small, secluded Shinto shrine on a hill overlooking the city. He was there every morning, a ritual of quiet contemplation. She must have had him followed, a sign of her own resourcefulness. She approached without a sound, her footsteps silent on the gravel path. She stood beside him, and for a long time, they both just watched the sun burn the morning mist off the sprawling metropolis below. "Vespri," she said finally, her voice flat. It was not a question. "Marco Vespri," Kaido affirmed, not turning to look at her. "He considers you his property. He will not stop until he has you back or you are dead." "I know," she said. The admission was heavy, freighted with years of running. "Who are you to him?" he asked. The park was quiet, only the distant hum of traffic and the chirping of early birds. "I was a name in a file," she began, her voice low and devoid of emotion, a recitation of a life that belonged to someone else. "An orphan with certain aptitudes. He found me, trained me. He honed me into a tool, his best tool. He called me his phantasma, the ghost. I did things for him. Things that change you." She paused, her gaze lost in the distance.
"He saw me as a creation.
A masterpiece. But a masterpiece is still just a thing to be owned. He controlled every aspect of my life. Until Vienna." "What happened in Vienna?" Kaido asked softly. "My target had a brother. A civilian. A musician. Vespri used him as leverage to ensure my compliance. He promised the brother would be left untouched. He lied. After the job was done, he had him killed. A loose end. To Vespri, it was just tidying up. To me," her voice trailed off, and for the first time, he heard a crack in her composure, a fissure revealing the deep well of pain beneath. "It was the breaking of a promise. I realized I wasn't his asset. I was his slave. So I disappeared. I took the emergency protocols he had taught me and used them against him. I built a new life. I just wanted to be left alone." "He will never leave you alone," Kaido stated. She turned to him then, her eyes clear and hard. "I know. Which brings me back to my first question. What do you want, Ishikawa?" He met her gaze. "Vespri has insulted me by operating in my city. He is hunting on my grounds. That is an offense that requires a response. You are the object of his hunt. That makes you relevant to my interests. I respect strength. I respect skill. And I believe that two masters are better than 1 inch. Her expression was unreadable.
You want to use me.
His tool becomes your tool. I want an alliance, he corrected her gently. Vespri sees you as a thing to be owned. I see you as a queen on the chessboard. A powerful piece that can change the outcome of the game. A fragile truce was being negotiated in the quiet morning air, a partnership forged not of trust, but of mutual interest and a shared, formidable enemy. Lena, or whatever her real name was no longer a waitress. She now occupied a suite of rooms adjacent to Kaido's own penthouse, a sanctuary of glass and steel high above the city she had tried to disappear into. Her presence was a quiet one. She moved through the expansive space with the same silent grace she had displayed at the restaurant, and ghost in a new, more luxurious machine. She spent her days in the penthouse's training room, a space Kaido had equipped with the best technology and equipment. She was rediscovering herself, honing the lethal skills she had tried to bury. The transformation was subtle, but profound. The carefully constructed facade of the meek server was gone, burned away to reveal the cold, hard certainty of the professional beneath. Her composure remained, but it was no longer the stillness of a statue hiding from the world. It was the coiled, patient stillness of a panther waiting for the hunt to begin. Kaido gave her space, observing from a distance. He saw the purpose return to her eyes, the sharp edge of her focus. They spoke little, but an understanding passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the storm that was gathering on the horizon. Ryota entered the main living area, his face grim. He bowed to Kaido, his eyes flicking for a moment toward Lena, who stood by the window, watching the city below. "Sensei," Ryota said, his voice low. "We have a problem." The Italian consulate's chief of security, a man named Lorenzo Gallo, was found dead in his apartment this morning. It was made to look like a suicide. Kaido turned from his contemplation of a centuries-old bonsai tree. "Gallo was one of our men. He fed us information." "Yes," Ryota confirmed. "And he was the one who confirmed the identity of Vespri's spotters. His death is a message. Vespri knows we are involved. He is eliminating our sources. He is declaring war." Kaido looked across the room at Lena. She had turned from the window, her gaze locked on his. She had heard everything. The opening moves of the game were over. The pretense was gone. Vespri was no longer just hunting her. He was now actively dismantling Kaido's operations in a direct challenge to his authority. This was no longer about sheltering a fugitive. It was about survival, about dominion. Kaido walked over to the wet bar and poured 2 glasses of Yamazaki single malt. He handed one to Lena. Her fingers were cool as they brushed against his. "He is bold," Kaido said, his voice a quiet murmur. "He believes he can walk into my city and take what he wants." Lena took a slow sip of the whiskey, her eyes never leaving his. A fire was kindling in their depths, a cold fire of long-suppressed rage. "He believes everyone is a tool to be used or a nail to be hammered down," she said, her voice like ice. "He has never faced someone he couldn't own or break." Kaido raised his glass in a silent toast. The hunt was over. The war had just begun. And at his side stood the ghost, finally ready to haunt the man who had created her.